Imagine this. A peaceful farm life shattered when a nosy HOA Karen blocks your barn gate with her shiny Tesla, thinking she's above the rules. But when push comes to shove, a simple brush fire turns her prized possession into a charred mess. Stick around for this epic tale of petty revenge that'll have you cheering. Hey everyone, if you're loving these wild HOA drama stories, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Let's dive right in. In the quiet outskirts of Willow Creek, where sprawling farms met the encroaching edges of suburban development, lived Elias Harper, a man who had inherited his family's old homestead. The property was a relic of simpler times, complete with a weathered barn that housed his tools, hay bales, and a few horses he tended to in his spare time. Elias valued his solitude, the rhythm of rural life that allowed him to escape the chaos of the nearby housing development governed by the infamous Willow Creek Homeowners Association. The HOA was notorious for its iron-fisted rules, enforced by a cadre of self-appointed guardians who patrolled the neighborhood with clipboards and condescending smiles. At the helm of this petty empire was Karen Whitaker, a woman in her mid-40s with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, designer athleisure wear, and an unshakable belief that her opinions were law. Karen had moved into the development 5 years prior, drawn by the promise of upscale living, but she quickly ascended to the position of HOA president through a combination of relentless volunteering and subtle intimidation. Her Tesla, a gleaming Model S in pearl white, was her pride and joy, a symbol of her eco-conscious superiority that she flaunted at every opportunity. Elias's property bordered the HOA land, separated only by a narrow dirt road that led to his barn gate. Technically, his land was outside the HOA's jurisdiction, a fact that irked Karen to no end. She viewed the farm as an eyesore, with its rustic fences and occasional whiff of manure carried by the wind. Over the years, she had lodged complaints with the county about everything from the height of his grass to the color of his barn paint. But each time, Elias's grandfathered rights protected him. Tensions simmered, but they hadn't boiled over, until one fateful autumn afternoon. The leaves were turning shades of amber and crimson, and Elias was preparing for his annual brush clearing. The dry undergrowth around his property posed a fire hazard, and he had a permit to burn it off in controlled piles. As he loaded his truck with rakes and matches, he noticed a familiar white Tesla pulling up to the edge of his driveway. Karen stepped out, her phone in hand, snapping photos of his barn. She had decided that the structure violated some vague aesthetic standard, even though it wasn't her business. Ignoring the private property sign, she parked her car directly in front of the barn gate, blocking Elias's access. He watched from his porch, his jaw tightening. This wasn't the first time she had trespassed, but parking there was a new level of audacity. Elias approached, but Karen waved him off dismissively, absorbed in her self-righteous mission. She spent the next hour pacing around, making calls to what Elias assumed were her HOA cronies, all while her Tesla sat like a smug sentinel. By the time she finally drove off, Elias had wasted precious daylight. Frustration brewed in him like a storm cloud. That evening, as he sat by his fireplace nursing a cup of coffee, he pondered the intrusion. Karen's actions weren't just inconvenient. They were a deliberate power play. He knew from local gossip that she had a habit of using her position to bully neighbors into compliance, fining them for minor infractions like unapproved mailbox designs or holiday decorations left up too long. Elias's farm represented everything she despised: independence, tradition, and a refusal to conform. He decided then that he wouldn't let this slide. The next day, he began documenting her visits, setting up a trail camera near the gate. Sure enough, Karen returned, this time with a measuring tape, scrutinizing the distance from his fence to the road. Again, she parked in front of the gate, oblivious or uncaring about the obstruction. Elias's horses needed feeding, and he had to maneuver around her car awkwardly, scraping his truck against a bush in the process. The scratch on his paint job fueled his growing resentment. Weeks passed and Karen's encroachments became routine. She would park there during her inspections, sometimes leaving her Tesla idling with the air conditioning on, as if to emphasize her disregard for others. Elias heard through the grapevine that she was petitioning the county to rezone his land, aiming to force him into the HOA's fold. The thought made his blood boil. He wasn't about to let some entitled suburbanite dictate his life. As winter approached, the brush piles grew and Elias's burn permit was renewed. He planned the fire carefully, ensuring it was away from structures but close enough to the road to clear the overgrown edges. Little did he know, Karen's next visit would coincide perfectly with his plans. One crisp morning, as Elias struck the match to ignite the first pile, he spotted the white Tesla approaching. Karen pulled up, parking exactly in her usual spot, right at the gate. She got out, clipboard in hand, ready to note more imagined violations. The wind shifted slightly, carrying sparks toward the dry grass near the road. Elias watched, a mix of anticipation and caution in his eyes, as the fire began to spread in a way he hadn't entirely anticipated. The flames licked at the underbrush, growing with surprising speed. Karen, too engrossed in her notes, didn't notice at first. By the time she looked up, the fire had crept closer to her car. Panic set in as she realized the danger, but it was too late to move the Tesla without risking the flames. Elias called out a warning, but the roar of the fire drowned it out. The story of that day would become legend in Willow Creek, a tale of unintended consequences and sweet, fiery justice. As the smoke cleared, Elias reflected on how a simple act of maintenance had escalated into something far more dramatic, setting the stage for the confrontations to come. The aftermath of the brush fire lingered in the air like the acrid scent of charred vegetation. Elias stood by his barn, watching as the fire department's trucks pulled away, their sirens fading into the distance. The controlled burn had veered off course thanks to an unexpected gust of wind, and while his property remained unscathed, Karen's Tesla bore the brunt of the mishap. The once pristine vehicle now sported blackened panels along one side. The paint bubbled and peeled like overcooked skin. Karen had fled the scene in hysterics, leaving her car behind as the flames danced perilously close. Elias had acted quickly, using his hose to contain the spread, but not before the damage was done. He reported the incident to the authorities as an accident, emphasizing his valid permit and the unpredictable nature of fire. The sheriff, a longtime acquaintance, nodded sympathetically, noting that Karen's parking had contributed to the issue by blocking access to his water source. No charges were filed, but the event ignited a firestorm of its own within the HOA community. Karen, humiliated and furious, rallied her allies at the next board meeting. She painted Elias as a reckless arsonist, demanding that the association take legal action to protect their quality of life. Petitions circulated, emails flew, and social media posts from HOA members decried the dangerous farmer next door. Elias, unfazed, went about his daily routines, tending to his horses and repairing the minor singe marks on his fence. He knew Karen wouldn't stop there. Her ego had been scorched as badly as her car. Sure enough, repair estimates for the Tesla arrived at Elias's mailbox, courtesy of Karen's insurance company, claiming he was liable for the damages. He consulted a lawyer friend in town who advised him that since the fire was permitted and her parking was trespassing, she had little ground to stand on. The battle lines were drawn. As weeks turned into months, Karen escalated her campaign. She installed security cameras pointed at Elias's property, claiming it was for neighborhood safety. Strange vehicles began patrolling the dirt road, HOA enforcers noting every perceived infraction. One day, Elias found a notice taped to his gate, warning of potential liens if he didn't comply with community standards. He tore it down, chuckling at the absurdity. The Tesla, now repaired but with a faint discoloration that Karen obsessively polished, became a frequent sight again, though she parked farther away, wary of another accident. Elias, sensing the ongoing threat, decided to fortify his defenses. He planted thorny bushes along the property line, installed brighter floodlights, and even adopted a large guard dog named Rusty, whose bark echoed across the fields. The dog took an immediate dislike to Karen, growling whenever her car approached. Tensions peaked during the annual HOA holiday party, held at the community center overlooking Elias's farm. From his window, he could see the twinkling lights and hear the muffled laughter. Karen, ever the hostess, used the event to garner support for her crusade, showing photos of the damaged Tesla to sympathetic ears. Elias, in turn, shared his side of the story with local farmers at the feed store, turning public opinion in his favor. Whispers spread that Karen was overstepping, her obsession bordering on harassment. One evening, as Elias sat on his porch watching the sunset, he noticed unusual activity. Karen's Tesla crept along the road, stopping intermittently as she tossed something onto his land. Curious, he investigated the next morning, finding bags of trash scattered near the barn. evidence of her attempting to frame him for littering. He collected the bags, noting the HOA stickers on them, and reported it to the sheriff. This time, Karen received a warning for illegal dumping. Her face, when confronted, twisted in rage, but she denied everything. The incident only fueled Elias's resolve. He began attending county meetings, speaking out against the HOA's expansionist tendencies. Allies emerged, other landowners tired of Karen's tyranny. A coalition formed, petitioning to limit the association's influence. Karen, feeling the pressure, doubled down. She hired a private investigator to dig into Elias's past, hoping for dirt to discredit him. The PI found nothing but a clean record and a history of community service. Frustrated, she turned to subtler tactics, spreading rumors online about unsafe conditions on his farm. Elias countered by starting a blog, chronicling the HOA's overreaches with photos and facts. His posts gained traction, attracting attention from beyond Willow Creek. Viral shares turned the spotlight on Karen, exposing her as the quintessential Karen archetype. As spring bloomed, the conflict simmered toward a boiling point. Elias prepared for his next brush clearing, permit in hand, while Karen plotted her revenge. Little did either know that the next encounter would push boundaries further, leading to consequences neither could fully predict. The embers of their feud glowed brighter, waiting for the right spark to reignite the blaze. With the arrival of summer's relentless heat, the landscape of Willow Creek transformed into a tinderbox of dry grass and simmering grudges. Elias Harper's farm stood resilient, its barn gate now reinforced with a sturdy lock to deter unwanted visitors. The previous incidents had hardened him, turning what was once mild annoyance into a strategic defense against Karen Whitaker's relentless assaults. Her Tesla, fully restored but carrying the invisible scars of the fire, symbolized her undiminished arrogance. She drove it with exaggerated caution near Elias's property, but her campaigns against him showed no signs of slowing. The coalition Elias had helped form gained momentum, with meetings held in local diners where farmers and independent homeowners shared stories of HOA overreach. Karen, sensing the shift, intensified her efforts. She lobbied the county board for stricter zoning laws, arguing that properties like Elias's posed environmental risks. At one heated session, her presentation included doctored photos of his land, exaggerating minor issues into major hazards. Elias attended, countering with evidence of her trespassing and harassment. The board, swayed by public support, tabled her proposals. Defeated but not deterred, Karen turned to personal sabotage. Late one night, Elias awoke to the sound of his dog Rusty barking furiously. Peering out, he saw shadows near the barn. By morning, he discovered slashed tires on his truck and graffiti on the gate reading, "Comply or leave." Security footage from his trail camera captured a figure resembling Karen, though masked. He presented it to the authorities, who issued a restraining order. Karen complied superficially, but her influence lingered through proxies, HOA members who drove by slowly, glaring. Elias, weary of the games, focused on his land. The brush had regrown, necessitating another controlled burn. He scheduled it meticulously, notifying neighbors and the fire department. On the designated day, as he ignited the piles, the wind was calm, the conditions ideal. Unbeknownst to him, Karen had tipped off a sympathetic inspector, claiming Elias was violating permits. The inspector arrived mid-burn, but after reviewing documents, deemed everything in order. Frustrated, Karen watched from afar, her Tesla parked on HOA land. In a moment of impulsivity, she drove closer, intending to confront the inspector. Her car edged onto the dirt road, blocking the gate once more. Elias noticed, his heart racing with déjà vu. The fire, contained but lively, crackled nearby. A sudden breeze stirred, much like before, carrying embers toward the road. Karen, stepping out to argue, left her door open. Sparks landed on dry leaves near the Tesla, igniting a small blaze that spread to the undercarriage. Elias shouted warnings, but the wind muffled them. The inspector called for backup as the fire engulfed the vehicle's side. Karen scrambled back, watching in horror as her symbol of status went up in flames. Firefighters arrived swiftly, extinguishing the blaze, but the Tesla was totaled, a twisted, smoking husk. Investigations followed, ruling it an accident exacerbated by Karen's obstruction. Her insurance denied the claim, citing repeated negligence. The HOA board, embarrassed by the publicity, voted her out as president. Karen, disgraced, sold her home and moved away. Her reign of terror ended. Elias's farm thrived, free from interference. the coalition succeeded in protecting independent properties, ensuring balance in Willow Creek. Years later, the story became local lore, a cautionary tale of hubris and unintended consequences. Elias, sitting on his porch with Rusty at his feet, reflected on the events with quiet satisfaction, knowing that sometimes justice arrives on the wings of a wayward spark. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this insane HOA revenge saga. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, subscribe for more epic stories, and drop a comment below with your own crazy neighbor tales. See you in the next one.